This video is sponsored by Backblaze. If you're constantly fighting for storage on your phone or on your computer, Backblaze offers unlimited cloud storage for as little as $9 a month. Link in the description. Japan, 1999. Sasaki Megumi, a 29-year-old restaurant owner, is walking home from a friend's house. It's the last time that anyone will see her alive. The following morning, Sasaki's body is found alongside an overgrown path. She has been torn apart, her body impaled on various trees and branches. Crammed into her mouth is a playing card, a jack of spades with the word Alice written on it. Sasaki is the first of many victims to come. The early 2000s would see 4 more murders take place in a similar fashion. The killer would always leave behind a playing card with the word Alice written on it in the victim's blood. This is the plot to The Alice Killings, a creepypasta uploaded in May of 2012. The author is BigMouth12349. The story shares some similarities to actual events, in particular Alfredo Galan Satillo, a serial killer who killed 6 and wounded 2 in the early 2000s. He shot his first victim in front of their 2-year-old son before leaving behind an ace of cups. In March of 2003, Alfredo would strike again, this time leaving behind a 2 of cups at the crime scene. Because of his infatuation with cards, he was appropriately named the Playing Card Killer. There are certainly differences between the Alice Killings and Alfredo's murder spree. One takes place in Japan while the other in Spain. The identity of the killer in the creepypasta remains ambiguous, while Alfredo has been arrested and charged. Regardless, it stands to reason that BigMouth12349 could have taken inspiration for his macabre story from Alfredo and his legacy of evil. Take a moment to listen to the following. This track was supposedly responsible for the deaths of many children in Japan. Come Follow Me, a creepypasta written in 2013, is considered by many to be the very first story to cover this phenomenon. The author, who is listed as unknown, writes about the children who listened to this music track and subsequently did horrible things to themselves. In the aftermath, detectives start questioning the developers of the game associated with the music, Pokemon Red and Green. This leads them to a developer who died shortly after the game was released. Written in his notes are the words, "Do not enter, watch out, and come follow me." This last gesture meaning follow me into the afterlife. Have you ever wondered what happens to a Pokemon when they die? The game this story references is in fact a legit game. Pokemon Red and Green, released in February of 1996, featured a location containing the aforementioned music track. The location, Lavender Town, is home to the Pokemon Tower, a burial ground dedicated to deceased Pokemon. Because of this, the town is said to be haunted. In the game, players are tasked with exploring Lavender Town and have the opportunity to find the Pokemon Tower, which is also the location of a ghost-type Pokemon named Ghastly. After the release of Come Follow Me, players of Red and Green began collectively recalling Lavender Town and the haunting track associated with it. The track supposedly contained high-pitched notes that only children could hear. These binaural beats were said to have caused headaches, insomnia, violent and erratic behavior. These symptoms would become a part of an illness known as Lavender Town Syndrome. In retrospect, we know that stories like Come Follow Me are just products of one's imagination. The nostalgia associated with Pokemon Red and Green allowed for people to be open to the idea that something sensational might have happened while listening to the track. Perhaps lesser known is an event that took place in 1997 that inspired the idea of Lavender Town and its effect on children. On December 16th, the 38th episode of Pokémon would be aired. During its broadcast in Japan, a sequence took place including flashing lights. These lights affected photosensitive viewers, causing them to fall into an epileptic seizure. It is estimated that at least 600 children were rushed to the hospital as a result. The incident would later be referred to as Pokémon shock. Following this, the Pokémon anime would take a near 4-month hiatus, and the idea of a tragic widespread Pokémon phenomenon would be established. 16 years later, that inspiration is still felt. If you've enjoyed the content that you've seen so far, please make sure to subscribe, as it would make me smile. The year is 1981. You're in an arcade playing this new release. It's called Polybius. The pixels create a geometric shape that sends obstacles in your direction. The goal is to survive for as long as possible. Pretty basic by today's standards. Children in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon were addicted to this game. They couldn't get enough of it. The lines leading to this machine would wrap around the building, and people would get into fights if a player was playing for too long. But what made this run-of-the-mill arcade game so sensational? Well, that might be because it didn't exist. Polybius was an urban legend created in 1998 on coinop.org, a gaming database where the first photograph of the game's startup screen was posted. This started a chain reaction of people recalling and exchanging stories about their experience with the game. After this, professional fact-checkers were called into play, eventually debunking that such a game ever existed. But this didn't silence people who specifically recalled playing the game back in 1981. Suddenly, the story was that the Men in Black used the machines for data mining before pulling the game entirely off of the market. Or maybe it was to study the psychoactive effects of playing video games. The list goes on. In July of 2008, the first creepypasta to include the Polybius phenomenon was posted. The story is an overview of this strange phenomenon, but included some new additions, such as people hearing crying or seeing grotesque faces in the corner of their eyes while playing the game. Many readers of the story came from the urban legend that arose in 1998. Even though it has been debunked again and again, people are not convinced, believing that the idea of their government turning on them could be a reality. Others have pointed out the similarities between Polybius and Tempest, a real game that came out in 1981 from Atari. This could explain the high number of people misremembering the game or believing that they actually once played it. The Kola Super Deep Borehole. This hole is located in Russia, and as of making this video, it is the deepest hole ever dug by humans, descending approximately 12,262 meters into the Earth's surface. That's over 7 miles for you Americans out there. Drilling began in 1970, and the story goes that the crew responsible for the hole uncovered something truly terrifying. You see, at that depth, it would obviously be impossible for any humans to survive, but the Kola crew heard people screaming. This audio would be named the Siberian Hell Sounds. The news would soon spread through tabloid newspapers and word of mouth about the crew's discovery, the legend itself even extending to writers in the 2010s. The Well to Hell is a creepypasta story with a lot of similar beats to the Kola Super Deep Borehole. It follows a crew in the Kola Peninsula as they dig continuously into the Earth's surface. Where it differs from actual events is that they managed to drill all the way to the Earth's core, effectively breaking through the molten center of the Earth. From here, the crew reports hearing people screaming. A geologist on the crew then states that they have just broken through the gates of hell. The idea of man reaching the afterlife pre-mortem is as old as the Christian Bible itself. Take, for example, the Tower of Babel, a large building constructed in an effort to reach the heavens, only to be knocked down by the wrath of God. But just as the well-to-hell creepypasta is fictional, so is the legend itself, or parts of it. Now, there did in fact exist a crew that dug a hole known as the Kola Super Deep Borehole. It went down 12,262 meters, but did not reach the Earth's core, let alone break through it. The supposed audio that the crew took of the tormented souls in hell was actually discovered to be pieces of the soundtrack of Barren Blood, an Italian horror film from 1972. Today, the location for the Kola Super Deep Borehole remains abandoned. Funding would be cut from the project in 1995, causing the drilling to come to a halt. Some researchers say that the crew had plans of drilling as much as 9 miles into the earth. Though sealed up, the hole itself emits unusually high temperatures, which has made it difficult for humans to remain in the area. In actuality, digging the Kola Super Deep Borehole led to the discovery of water. Lots of water that geologists were shocked to see at such depths within the earth. On top of that, they also discovered microscopic fossils of single-celled plankton. But of course, no gates of hell or screaming of the damned. If you were on the internet in the 2010s, there's a good chance you came across one or both of these images. This image in particular, of what appears to be a crazed man in a straitjacket, found me while I was trying to fall asleep at night. The story these images accompany is known as the Russian sleep experiment. This is without a doubt one of the most popular creepypastas ever written. Most of us have heard the story by now. It's the 1940s, and the Russians are trying to improve the performance of their soldiers. They figure if a soldier never has to sleep, they can always be fighting. In an effort to make this idea a reality, the Russians give 5 test subjects a stimulant gas that prevents them from sleeping. In the following 15 days, the patients go crazy, destroying and eating themselves. Many enthusiasts believe the Russian sleep experiment is the most shocking and impactful urban legend of the internet age. But despite being just that, the story does have quite a few ties to real-life events. The Palgrave Handbook of Contemporary Gothic is a book of essays on Gothic culture from the 20th and 21st centuries, and it makes reference to the Russian sleep experiment in its latter half, stating that the story reflects many fears and anxieties held by individuals during World War II. And while we don't necessarily associate human experimentation with Russians, there is a group who certainly did commit such atrocities. The Nazi Party was no stranger to subjecting its enemies to awful experiments. Most infamously, Joseph Mengele and his awful treatment of twins. There does, however, exist a closer correlation, however, to the Russian sleep experiment. A museum in Budapest, the House of Terror, offers a basement exhibit which recreates small cells built by the communist government. These cells were so small that their inhabitants would only be able to stand up. This act would lead to sleep deprivation, which ultimately made the prisoner more suggestible and willing to give out desired information. While it lacks the inclusion of prisoners tearing themselves apart, there are certainly commonalities between the two. The most unfortunate part being that the true acts of man are sometimes scarier than the acts of fiction.